We won't have music, unfortunately.
Like no intro?
No.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Why is this? What the fuck is going on? Why do I have to do this again?
Okay, so
What are you seeing on the end?
we are live.
Yep.
Are we? Okay. Great. We're live. I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on my end here. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am totally sorry. I am using my main computer is at the Apple Store getting repaired, so I'm using my backup computer, and it is a Windows, and I am not always using Windows, so I'm trying to get everything set up here as opposed to Windows, and there are some things that I'm missing. So if we're live, great. We're live on Facebook. I'm going to have to just upload this to YouTube, it looks like, at this particular point in time. I'm not going to worry about that. But you can follow us on here, and I'll do the intro as if the intro is me doing it. Do 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 do. Does that sound right? Kind of. I will never do that again. I promise.
It's close enough.
Close enough. We've got Devin. Hello, Devin.
Hello, Kev.
I did a significant event happen to you before last time we spoke? Was it more than Thanksgiving for you on Monday?
Yes, it was. It was my 30th birthday, and I want to thank my fiance Kaylin and Sean for setting it up. We went to OT Brewing. A little plug there for people in Calgary. Check it out. It's a pretty sweet spot, and a great beer. So yeah, go check them out. But yeah, it was really nice. Luckily, there's a lot of my friends that actually had to do their 30th birthdays at home because of quarantine and COVID and all that bullshit. So I was very fortunate that I was able to celebrate with a small select group of friends. So it was a good time.
Awesome. Well, happy birthday to you. Chris, hello.
Hello.
Was it your birthday recently?
Yeah. So last podcast we actually did was the day of my birthday. And that's why I was drinking as we were recording instead of having a coffee or water. And yeah, had a fully packed weekend full of festivities. And then last night I had my kind of small get together with friends here at the house.
Nice. Well, happy birthday to you. Sean, is it your birthday?
No, I was I got the lucky end of the stick in 2020. Got my birthday out of the way before COVID and quarantine all happened. So yeah, it's been a while.
Oh, well, happy birthday to you.
Devin, is it your birthday?
No, it's not my birthday is in 10 days. So
okay.
It's coming up.
Yeah, so yes, we are all born in October, so we're like the beginning of the season type of, I guess, beginning of hockey season type of thing, I guess. Is that the best way to put that? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Yes. So we got lots to get into. I'm going to start by just making a simple statement in general commentary. If sometimes hockey analysts are very short-sighted, that's what we will call in the radio biz, in the podcast world, a bit of a tease. So, but do we start with Devin? Since it's your 30th birthday, do we start with the Flames, the Leafs, or the Canucks?
Oh man, well, normally I'd say let's start with the Canucks, but I gotta be first to say welcome to Leafs Nation, Jumbo Joe. It's great to have you. I'm super happy that Dubas made that happen. It's funny, speaking about analysts, there's a bunch of analysts that are questioning the Leafs room because they needed another leader in Joe Thornton. But I think it's complete hogwash and bullshit, because who wouldn't want Joe Thornton on your team, whether or not you have a good room or not? He's a Hall of Famer. He will have his number retired in the rafters of in the Shark Tank down in San Jose, and he's probably one of the biggest characters in the NHL. So yeah, I'm thrilled to have him on our team, and I'm really looking forward to the start of next season.
What is everyone else's thoughts on Joe Thornton joining the I wanted to say the Calgary Flames. Could you imagine that?
That'd be amazing.
I think it's a good move, even if they could put together a lineup of Wayne Simmons, Jason Spezza, and Joe Thornton, which would be an all-star lineup from 2005. But it's a good move. I honestly do think it is. The questioning about the Leafs room, I actually think it might be a little bit warranted when you have all that talent and you can't win a playoff round. I think there's something there. I think there is. I don't think it's as big as many of the analysts are making it out to be. I think they do. It's not that big, but I do think, like, when you look at it, like, what's been holding the Leafs back? And it's probably a very complicated answer, but would leadership and understanding how to play a full 60 minutes and a full 200-foot game really, it just is that part of it? And I think if you leadership is part of that, because if your top end, high end players aren't doing that, then your players lower down on the lineup aren't necessarily going to want to follow that as easily. So bringing in Joe Thornton can't hurt that at all, because he's been to a cup final, he's played in many playoffs, he's been to the conference final I think 3 or 4 times, because San Jose just can't get it done. But he knows how to get there. He knows actually how to win a playoff series, which I don't think anyone else on the top end Leafs know how to do at this point. So I like it. I think it's a good signing for the Leafs. Even
Brody hasn't advanced into the playoffs. TJ Brody has not won it. Wait, he was on the 2015. He's won one playoff round.
Yeah.
Chris, did you have any? Sorry, go ahead, Devin.
Oh, I just wanted to counteract Sean. I understand your thought process, and I don't know if it has to do with the room or the product on the ice. But I mean, once you start questioning John Tavares' leadership and him having the room entirely, that's where I think you're crossing. Not Sean, but like the analysts are crossing the line with doing that. So it's I understand Sean's opinion on that, and I'm sure there's something to that. But I mean, I think that it's not as big of a thing as people make it out to be. A lot of these players, Nylander, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, they're still pretty young players. So they learning from players like Wayne Simmons. They said last year that Jason Spezza was a massive addition in the room, and everybody loves him. And adding Joe Thornton to that mix, I mean, I just think it's all positive. But questioning, sure, you can question the room and you can question the product on the ice, and I think it's more the product on the ice and getting that done than it is in the room. But yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time when even Toronto analysts are questioning what's happening in that room.
What I would question, I think the question I would have though is I think it's very fair to say that Tavares got that captaincy in a very tumultuous way, because I think everybody was expecting it to be Austin Matthews. And then the revelation of that summer incident came out, and PR wise, you couldn't give Austin Matthews the C. So Tavares was in a very, I'm not saying that there's a problem in the room. That's not what I'm saying, but I certainly don't think Tavares was given the C under the best of circumstances.
No, and that's fair. That's completely fair. I mean, I think if it was my decision, I would have thought Morgan Riley should have had it personally.
Yeah.
He should be in agreement there.
On that one.
And as far as my opinion on the whole Jumbo Joe thing, my question is, so do we expect a Pavelski going to Toronto in 2021, 2022? Because apparently, you know, they have a knack for getting all the older guys from San Jose. But no, ultimately, I'm in agreement with these guys. Jumbo Joe is a character guy. He's going to bring veteran leadership to the room. If you get him on a budget, he's a great ad.
Yeah, $700,000. Yeah, that's pretty good. And you know, I know that everybody's making the mock of it. If you're over 40 and you want to play hockey, it seems to me that it can be done, and it seems to me that this can be done in professional sports. So, but
well, Yager paved the way.
Yeah, Solani was what, 44, and Chara's 42.
Not to mention Chris Chelios, another one.
Or the guy who started it all, your idol, Mr. Hockey.
Gordie fucking Howe.
Yeah.
Goddamn
If he
right.
was alive, he probably would still be playing somewhere.
Because didn't he play in like 4 different decades or something crazy like that?
Yeah.
He played into his 50s, right?
Yeah.
So I guess now, Devin, my question with the Leafs and Thornton is, where does this put the Leafs?
I mean, it's a massive signing for sure, but the proof will be in the pudding. They need to show up and play every single game. There's been times where Austin Matthews has taken games off, and I know the adage is that it's a grind. You can't be at your peak and your best for 82 games out of the year. But I think that leadership of Jason Spezza, John Tavares, Wayne Simmons, and the veteran leadership, I think, is going to be a massive boost to the lineup. And not to mention adding Jimmy Vesey, who Alexander Crowfoot played with at Harvard, and they I guess lit it up their last year there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Keith put them together on a lineup here, and then have so you have Alexander Crowfoot, Nick Robinson, and Jimmy Vesey on your third line, and then your quote unquote fourth line or veteran line. You have Thornton, Spezza, and Simmons, and I think that really solidifies the forward group very, very well.
It's not bad. I don't know. I don't know if I put them in the Boston Tampa league yet, but it's good. It's good.
That's assuming they're in the same division.
That too.
Well, yeah, we'll get into that. I have some questions, but you still okay, even after COVID is over, you're still in the Eastern Conference, so assuming ahead.
Right. Well, the big question for the Leafs for me is how are they going to make it all fit underneath the cap? They still have Travis Dermott and Ilya Mikheyev to sign, and both of those guys are going to get close to $2 million, if not a little bit more, I think.
Devin's face.
I don't see Mikheyev getting $2 million. He only played 1 year in the league, and he was injured for a third of it. And yes, he played well for the games he did play. I see him going at 1.5. But yeah, Dermott, he'll probably get a significant pay bump there. As of right now, the current cap hit of the Leafs is 1.4, so just under $1.5 million. So it will be. I'm very curious on how Dubas is going to go forward with this. But who knows when the league is going to get going. I know they want January 1st, or potentially there's rumors that it's going to be pushed to February 1st. So I think that he does have time to pull a couple more strings. to make it all work. But I don't know how really that will work with everybody else in a very similar kind of cap crunch. Not the majority of the league, but almost half the league still has to make some significant moves to get under the cap. So yeah, I don't know how he's going to do it, but knowing Dubas, I think that he'll be able to figure it out.
Well, before we continue, I just need to do this. Canucks Twitter. See, everybody has a cap problem. Everybody, not just the Canucks. Anyway, go on.
It's interesting because one of the reasons I brought this up was because on Twitter, James Myrtle tweeted out today that Dubas doesn't anticipate needing to shed any more players to create cap room. It says they may use 20 player roster at times too to try and open up cap, because like the more the days you have less cap opens up cap later on in the year, the way the cap accumulates and everything. So it's going to be interesting because I think it'll be interesting because I don't know, does that mean Robertson isn't going to make the team? Lettinen and Sandin are both waiver exempt, so they can go down to whatever the AHL looks like, and we'll get into that later on as well. But there's going to be other players that they're going to have to make decisions on in terms of waiving, and what does that look like too. So there are still some decisions to be made, whether or not Dubas is willing to admit it or not. There's still decisions to be made here, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does, because it's going to be tough for him to make it all work. I think he does have a couple really smart assistants in Brandon Pridham and Lawrence Gilman to make it work. Both have worked the cap really well in the past. Gilman with the Canucks back in the 2011 days, and then Pridham even last year when somehow trading for an injured player to open up cap space wasn't considered cap circumvention, but backloading a contract is, front-loaded contract is. But that's neither here or there. The longer recapture is bullshit. That's what I'm trying to say. He's got a couple really smart assistants to be able to work the system there. So I'm sure they've got a plan. I'm just interested to see what it looks like.
Well, and to your point about bringing potentially not having Robertson on the Leafs, I mean it like the younger players like Lettinen and Sandin as well. Why not let them ripen a little bit more down in the AHL and whatever that looks like? There's nothing wrong with doing that. So yeah, I could definitely see that happening. And I guess the only thing though is that they are such a small cap hit that having them on your team might not be a bad thing with the cap being the way it is. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he has a plan and he'll execute it the way he sees fit.
But TJ Brody as your big defensive move, I'm not sure if I'm a Leaf, is that going to be satisfactory enough?
He is better than Cody Ceci. That's all I need to say.
The thing with the Leafs defense is they've got some good young players that can really step up. They got Sandin, they've got Travis Dermott, maybe even Liljegren finally makes that next step. If one of those players can really step up, then the Leafs are looking really good, in my opinion. Especially if it's Liljegren for me, because he's a right shot and they only have one right shot defenseman on their roster right now. Sandin plays the left. He's a left shot guy. Mikko Lettinen is a left shot guy, but plays both sides, as is TJ Brody. But Brody likes the right side more. They've got another one. They've got Zach Bogosian, but again,
I forgot about that. That's actually an underrated signing.
He'll basically be their CC this year, just not paid as much. Is really
and better, actually. He'll be a better version of CC.
Well, it depends on what Bogosian shows up. Is it going to be the Zach Bogosian of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Stanley Cup winners, or is it going to be the Zach Bogosian of the Buffalo Sabres, who was very mediocre? And to Sean's point about Liljegren, he did have a big stepping stone kind of last half of the year in the AHL last year. So he's definitely made some strides. He played a couple of games up with the big club in the Leafs. So he definitely has made some strides to be become a more of an NHL player. So that could be a potential option for the Leafs going forward too.
Yeah, and it'll be the other thing up front with the cap issues. I'm just going through their cap friendly page, and they've got Pierre Engvall in the AHL because you only have so many players on the roster, and he makes more than the allowable amount to Barry. So they're counting almost right for this season. They're counting $175,000 of his cap if he's playing in the AHL. So they can move things around to make it work, but there's still a lot to do in my opinion. And Dubas saying that he doesn't have to move players out. I'm sure, yeah, you can make it work, but then I think you're hamstringing your team and potentially put them in a spot where you could pull a flame really early on in the cap era, where you had to dress less than a full roster because you were capped out. So I'm gonna be I'm gonna be watching the Leafs and what they do quite intently, just because I'm really intrigued on how they're gonna get out of this. Because yeah, like Devin said, maybe Mikheyev doesn't get 2 million, but 1.5 to maybe 1.75. Because yeah, he was injured for a lot, but he was really good for them, and he could get that money out in Russia if he really wanted it. And then Dermott, he's been playing for a while, and he deserves a bit of a pay raise here. Like he's been one of the young guns for the Leafs for the past couple of years, and he's been a solid defenseman for them when he's been in the lineup. So I think him pushing up close to 2, I think is fair as well. So that's at least 3.5, close to $4 million that they're going to have to account for. And when you have less than 1.5 million in cap space now, where's that coming from?
And yeah, I could see it being a very similar situation with San Jose and Kevin Labanc. He took a 1-year, $1 million deal just to get Joe Thornton in and playing with the team, and he's been able to get paid this year. I don't know exactly the number. I'll take a look at that, but that might be a conversation that he has with Dermott and Mikheyev for this year, being like, well, they're the league is the way that it is right now, and you can see that if you take a bit of a pay cut this year, then we'll pay you a bit more next year, maybe give you an extra year on your next contract. So I think that might be a negotiation point as well. And people were saying like Labanc's an idiot for doing that, but it's shown this year.
The only thing that worries me about that, I see your point, and I'm not comparing the NFL to the NHL, but when you look at what happened to Dak Prescott for the Cowboys, no contract next year, broke his ankle, he's out at least 6 months. I think players are going to may think a little bit differently about doing that.
That's the one thing with the uncertainty of what this year looks like, and the uncertainty of money and everything. You got to take what you can get at this point. Even in hockey, look at Josh Levo. Yeah. He signed a 1-year, $1.5 million contract with the Canucks last summer. Was playing really well, and then broke his kneecap. And now he's gonna be lucky if he gets $1 million on a 1-year deal anywhere he goes, because if you somehow get injured, are teams going to be willing to pay for some, like if it's a significant injury, especially a knee or a shoulder or a groin, ones that really take a long time to heal. Just ask Yusuf Alamaki on the Flames. Even Jake Virtanen on the Canucks has had a major shoulder injury that took a while for him to recover from. Especially for it's going to be tough. So, and we don't know what this season looks like. So, is the cap situation going to be even? Is it going to be much different next year in terms of who's the amount of money that's available? Not necessarily cap, but money available. We saw it over the way teams were spending. Like it was like the amount of money that was spent in the first little bit of UFA is usually exorbitant, and now most of the teams were very well
calculated,
restrained it and calculated this year. Like would Mike Hoffman still be available in a normal UFA season at a week after it opened? No. And so it's just I think at some point they need to make sure that they get paid what they're worth. And yes, you can have that conversation, but I don't think it's going to be as well received as say Kevin Labanc did last summer when the money was more readily available, and the thought the money was still going to be readily available for years to come.
Speaking of which, to answer Devin's question, he's getting 4.725 now instead of 1.
Yeah,
and that was for 4 years, right?
Yeah,
so
18.9 year. Yeah,
it definitely worked out for him, and there's pros and cons to it. And you talk about how some players take a bit of a hometown discount, if you will, to be on a contender and to be on a team that could possibly win the Stanley Cup. And that's a question only Dermott and Mikheyev can really answer, right? But the safe move is definitely to ask big and then come down from there, right?
Yeah, you look at Josh Anderson. He did with what the demands that he apparently was asking from Columbus and then Montreal. He wanted a 1-year deal so he could go to UFA next year, or a max 7-year deal or 8-year deal with Columbus. And so Montreal gave him the max 7, which is kind of crazy for a guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy in his NHL career and not been able, and has had, I think, 2 good seasons. But he was like, look, I either want to go to UFA next year, or I want secured long-term security. So it's going to be like that for me at this point. If I'm a younger player and I'm not necessarily taking a discount at this point, because you never know what's coming up next. If you're an older player who's made his money and say they've invested it well and don't necessarily need it, then that's when you can start looking at, say, like we just saw it with Joe Thornton. Like he's worth much more than the $700K that he signed for. And he signed for $700K without any bonuses either, because he's a 35 plus player, so he's eligible for bonuses, and he didn't sign for it. He just wanted to play and wanted to see if he could what he could do with the quote unquote hometown Toronto Maple Leafs. But that's where you're going to get some of that is going after them, or going after the step below the Mikheyevs and the Dermotts. And one of the names right now for the Canucks is Jace Howryluk, who didn't get qualified by Ottawa. And if they can get him at, say, $800,000, and he can be a top 9 player for them, outplay his contract, that'd be amazing. So you have to either look for bargains on players that haven't been used properly, or you have to look for bargains on veterans who are willing to take a little bit less because they've already made their money and haven't won. The players who have made the show and are looking get paid are still should still be looking to get paid. They're not. I don't foresee them, Dermott or Mikheyev, looking at taking that 1 year at $1 million deal. I think they're gonna want at least, especially because, sorry for rambling, but especially because of the escrow issue as well, right? Like $1 million with the 20% escrow, and then you throw on taxes, you're only taking home like maybe half of it. So
yeah, there's that too.
Money,
sure.
but yeah, like they're gonna want as much. They're gonna want to get as much as close to what they would normally take home as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole point, I can't think, has been with this whole overpayment thing with restricted free agency. I think some people are expecting these free agents. You're expecting a Markstrom, a Tanev, and a Toffoli, although that Toffoli contract may be a little bit different. But Markstrom and Tanev, you understand like why the Flames, in a sense, you have to almost overpay, because they're not interested in just, they're thinking long term. They're thinking for their future ahead of their family, and they don't know what's going to happen. And when you're in unrestricted free agency, you have to make that move. Like, you have to go 6 years, even though it may not be what you want to do, right? So,
well, an example on the other side of that,
it's unreasonable to expect players at this particular point to say, well, I'm going to take a lower deal. And even the analysts expecting general managers to lowball players at this particular point, I don't think is a fair expectation.
Well, at this point, I think it is, because you've gone through the top end
at the start of free agency, though.
At the start of free agency, the top players are going to get paid.
Yeah,
the top player, whoever gives the most money in the most term, was most likely going to get the player. There are exceptions to that, with Taylor Hall and Tyson Barrie, who wanted to bet on themselves, and that's a legit option for them, because both of them went to spots that give them an opportunity to really rack up the points. But for the most part, yeah, whoever offered the most term and the most money was getting it, as well as whoever probably put together the right the right structure on the deal. Because again, once you go long term, it's all about, in with today's economy and environment and climate, with COVID and all that, structure is huge. You're looking at these like super long-term deals, they're getting paid a lot in years 3 and 4. In the 3 to 4 year deals, they're getting paid a lot at the end of the deal, because the players are going to take home more money then than they are now, because hopefully things get sort of fixed and people can go back to going to hockey games. They can have the ticket revenue and everything properly, and they can and then the escrow goes down and they're taking home more actual cash.
It's true. I mean, you have an example on the other side of the stick, though, is I'm sure Mike Hoffman is probably kicking himself for not taking one of the offers that he got, and now he's sitting there waiting, and he doesn't have a job. And I think it kind of, if you look at the rumblings about how much Taylor Hall was being offered at $4.5 million for 2 to 3 years, that's been kicked around on social media, and that shows that a top 10 left winger in this league is getting offered that from some of the teams. God, I can't imagine what Hoffman's being offered right now. Probably 2.5 maybe, and he's a 30+ goal scorer pretty much every year. So yes, he doesn't really do much else, but goals are what wins hockey games. So that's what he's betting on, but he hasn't gotten a contract yet. So that's just an example from a player who decided to hold out and wait for a perfect situation or a number and term that he really likes, but he hasn't gotten it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to touch on this, because I think this is where people have been really short-sighted. I actually like the Taylor Hall signing in Buffalo. I think it's a good move for them. It's 1 year. It's a show me deal for both. And it's very similar to what happened with the Canucks and Thomas Vanek. You sign this guy, you give him 1 year, you shows what he does, and he's a possible trade chip at the trade deadline, and you could get something for him as he moves on, right? So, and he's going to be one of those guys that when trade center or trade deadline or whatever coverage that is, he's going to be on the top of the list, and teams are going to be interested in him. So, especially when you will need scoring. So this is a good opportunity for both the Sabres and the Hall. I mean, yes, Hall said he wanted to win. Is he going to win in Buffalo? Nobody's saying that, but there's an opportunity there that I think is very short-sighted. A lot of people that didn't, I think is a lot of people didn't see that. I'm like, that's actually a pretty good move for Buffalo.
I think that's a great point, Kev, about the trade deadline as well. I didn't even think about that before, but yeah, you're investing in a guy, and if it works out, that means you're in the playoffs and you're playing pretty well. But I think other people are not giving Buffalo as much credit as they have. I mean, they got a decent top six with Eichel, Hall, and Olofsson. Olofsson, if you don't know, he was amazing with Jack Eichel on the power play. He was a great rookie for them. And then on your second line, they have Eric Stahl, Jeff Skinner, and Sam Reinhart. I mean, that's a pretty decent top six team. And then you have not to mention Rasmus Dahlin, that's still a defenseman stud that's on his way up. And they got Henry Jokiharju from the Blackhawks, and he's a good solid, a good middle range defenseman too. Not to mention Colin Miller, Brandon Montour, Ristolainen, Jake McCabe. I don't know. I don't think they are as bad as people are making them out to be. I think they're like the Edmonton Oilers of the East, maybe a year behind that, and I think they might be sneaky good this year. I wouldn't put it past them, especially with Taylor Hall playing with Jack Eichel. They have a good potential to be a contender for the playoffs.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
And also, Ralph Kruger has coached Taylor Hall before. He was.
I think Kruger was a huge selling point for Hall, because you go back to when Kruger only got one season in Edmonton, and how upset some of the players were, including Taylor Hall, that he only got one season.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Buffalo do something but that would require their owner to actually buck up and pay some of these players. Like, they still have Olofsson needs a new contract, Reinhart needs a new contract. They still have to find it. They still have Allmark, who needs a new contract. And it's gonna. They need their owner to stop sinking money in the Buffalo Bills and actually start paying for the Sabres a little bit here for them to be able to make that next step. I agree with Devin in terms of them being a bit like the Oilers, not really be able to put it all together, but. I do look at that defense, and there's potential there, but that's really it. Ristolainen has major warts defensively. Colin Miller has major warts defensively. Jokiharju, he got traded away from Chicago because he didn't necessarily have the best defensive side. They can score. If they can find a way to go full on. Like Oilers back in 2016 and just outscore their opponents, then they have a chance. But I think if Kevin Adams is smart, he's still looking at ways to make his team better and to move some players out and bring in some other ones, just like Billy Guerin in Minnesota, and try and figure out who's there for the long haul. That's the big question for Buffalo, is who is there for the long haul? Who is there who is on the roster currently that you can win with? That was the question that the Canucks had with Travis Green. He was trying to figure out who they can win with. And we found out that there are some players there. They couldn't keep a couple of them, but they've got others. So it's always about, especially when you've got this absolute high-end talent that Buffalo has, especially up front now with Hall as well, is who's there for the long term, who's willing to sacrifice points for to play defense properly, and who's willing to put it to put in a 65-minute game, 65-minute effort in a 60-minute game to make sure that they win. So I think if you, the lucky thing for Buffalo is that they've got Ralph Kruger, who is a very, very smart hockey mind, and he knows what's up and he'll be able to spot that really quickly.
And he might be the right coach if, we'll get into this later, if it is a shortened season, that might be the perfect coach, almost the perfect style of coach to have. But we'll see. We'll see about that. Anyway, Devin or Chris, were you going to say something?
I don't really have much to add.
Well, like talking about the owner and divvying up and getting off his wallet. I mean, they just gave Jeff Skinner a $9 million contract that goes until 26, 27. Like that, I understand, and maybe they're a bit gun shy because of how much of a step back he took from last year to the year before. But yeah, it sucks because Buffalo has such good hockey fans, and they have been watching the Pagulas just not do much with the team. And Jack Eichel's been the best thing that's happened to them in a very, very long, since Dominic Hasek. And that says a lot, because Dominic has been in the league for over a decade, so I just feel for that fan base. I really do.
Well, and I also find it fascinating that guy number 9 is being questioned about his maturity and being a captain, a leader. And the guy up north of you in Calgary there, they've had one playoff series win, and that captain is apparently mature and everything is A-okay. Just saying.
That's a backpack for you, hey Kev.
What's that?
That's a backpack. So it's something you carry around with you. The whole McDavid being captain.
Well, it was funny. Kiprios was talking about. Kiprios was saying like, look, or it was, and PJ Stock. It was more PJ Stock that Eichel's not mature, and I'm like, he's too young to be a cap. I'm like, hello, what about McDavid then? Like, this is pretty much the same. Isn't it the same thing? I don't know. Anything else on this before we move on? Apparently, Devin didn't like to be on the top left-hand corner. He wanted to move to the bottom right. He does that during these podcasts sometimes.
It's habit. It's hockey habit. Creatures of habit, man.
Line change.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. Do we want to talk about the Canucks or the Flames now?
Well, if you want me to talk more, I'd probably be more inclined to say Canucks.
All right. Did we get the birthdays?
Because props to these two guys, they can talk for hours in depth. Whereas for me, I find I'm more of a surface level fan, not deep diving into all the nitty gritty. So yeah, if you want me to talk more, let's talk Canucks.
Okay. So we'll start with this. So it was a last weekend of, I think everybody was throwing things at computers and everybody was angry and everybody was, especially Monday morning when it was announced that Tyler Toffoli joined the Montreal Canadiens on a pretty reasonable contract. Probably if offered by the Canucks, he probably would have taken, I suspect. I don't know. But Toffoli said that the obvious situation in Canuck line with their salary cap was a factor. But then later on in the evening, Nate Schmidt was acquired after Alex Pietrangelo joined the Vegas Golden Knights, who I don't know. I guess Alex Pietrangelo is going to have to play 6 positions on defense for that salary cap to clearly work. But anyway, that's a whole other topic for another day. But Nate Schmidt ends up in Vancouver for a 3rd-round pick in 2022. So I guess my question is, did Nate save Benning from being up Schmidt's Creek? And did you get that joke?
I definitely did. It's a bit of a groaner, but I appreciate it because I am a lover of dad jokes.
Oh, that's so good.
Such a groaner.
But no, actually, I think that there's probably a pearl of wisdom in there. Like I think Schmidt probably did kind of save Benning's hide as far as flack from the fan base, because if all four of our major guys walked and we didn't get anything in return, like they're like if you think Canucks Twitter can be toxic at the best of times, they would have had, I hate to use this word, a riot over not having a a major signing during free agency after having all four of their major guys walk. So yeah, Schmidt is definitely a good get, and the fact that we got him on a bargain kind of reminds me very much of how we kind of fleeced San Jose to get Ehrhoff back in the day. So yeah, I'm a fan of the move.
Yeah, it's a fantastic move. The Canucks struck out on a few things, players there, in leading up to it. Like with Tanev moving on, Stetcher moving on, Toffoli moving on. They needed to make a big move, and they were able to capitalize on Vegas's desperate need to move out a top four player, because they needed to go after Pietrangelo. So they get Schmidt is a left shot defenseman, but he plays the right side very well. So it's an interesting fit, but I think it works. He can play with either Edler or Hughes, and you're going to build you're going to have a really good option there. If you play him with Hughes, you're going to have a legit top pair that can move the puck up the ice like no other. And if you play him with Edler, then you've got two really good puck movers on two pairs that can play with 40 minutes of the game, 40 minutes plus of the game, and you're going to be able to have elite puck movers on the ice at that point. So I really do like the trade. For a third round pick, it's an absolute steal of a deal. The talk was that there were some mutterings that they should have pushed for Vegas to give him another asset going back, but Vegas is not going to do that for a potential divisional rival. And even if we go away from the normal divisions for this season, Schmidt is signed for another 4 years after that, right? Yeah. So they're going to go back to those divisions once things settle out here, and he could create a massive issue for the Vegas Golden Knights going forwards, especially if Pettersson and Horvat and Besser and Hughes all continue to develop, and the Canucks do reach their potential and become maybe the go-to team, the favorite for the Pacific Division in 2-3 years with that talent. So they're not going. I'm sure they had other options. I think Florida was in there looking to gain an asset. I'm sure Detroit was, because that's what Stevie Y said he was going to look to do. So the Canucks targeted the Vegas with an ability to take on that quote unquote take on that contract and get a top four defenseman. And Vegas also targeted Vancouver as someone who wasn't going to try and fleece them and pull out another asset away from Vegas. So you helped Vegas out of a bit of a cap jam. They still have more to do. But you also helped yourself in terms of filling out your top four and adding a player who can really help this team. And if you watched his interview with the media, Nate Schmidt is a character. Like you could go full on hockey cliche, and he is a beauty. Like, he loves to talk. He's got a sense of humor to him. Like, when the new beginning of every press conferences is use the raise your hand function, and so he puts his hand up and puts a little sheepish grin on. Like, he's going to be a great ad on the ice and off the ice. And he's coming to join a couple of his buddies from Washington in Braden Holtby and Jay Beagle. So he's got some comfortability there. I think it's going to be a great ad, and I think it's going to help the Canucks for years to come.
it's funny how earlier this year Sean was talking about make sure that your right side defenseman is a right side D or shoots right, and now it's totally fine. Everything's fine. And
No, no.
This is the best ad ever. I love it. It's great, awesome. It's a Canucks. Oh, it's the best. I'm just kidding.
So what
I'm just kidding.
Was that if
Okay.
you're going to do it, you need to make sure that that defenseman is a really top end guy. And Vegas got away with it because they had a left shot guy who was able to do it. They got to the conference finals, right? They were able to make sure that it worked. Like they got away. Like I still think the Canucks need to find another right side defenseman to play on that bottom pair, or hope that Chatfield or Rafferty can step up. Because having only one right side defenseman really does. I'm still not sold on it, but in terms of it, Schmidt can play the right side, right? He can do it, and especially if you play him with Hughes, and he knows that he can just give it to Hughes if he's in trouble, right?
Yes, I don't get me wrong. I like the trade. I like the player. I just had to give you a little bit of shit there because I got shit on you a couple times about it. So I love the fact that yes, the ideal defensive pairing, not left and right, but you have an offensive defenseman, you have a defensive defenseman, and Nate Schmidt is a tweener. He's right in between. He's a good offensive. He has good offensive side and is good in his defensive zone. And so I think that is the fit to put him with Hughes and see how well they work together. And I have a feeling that's a very dynamic duo going forward for the Canucks.
Chris, what is your board saying there?
I got even more desperate with characters. I had to go with the hashtag for the H in Schmidt.
Chris,
I have 2 hyphens.
To get to the mic.
You have to talk into the mic.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, I was probably covering it, moving in there. But yeah, I had to use a hashtag to use the H in Schmidt, and the T is 2 hyphens.
Okay. Because I'm wondering, I just want to throw this out there. I know that it's pretty, like, I understand the Hughes Schmidt pairing, but what about Edler and move Hughes to the right side, go Myers Schmidt every once in a while? It's the second year for Hughes. I still think he needs some veteran presence. I'm not sure I would like Hughes and Myers together. I don't think that would be a good pairing.
They've done that a few times in this past season, and it's been fantastic, actually. They drive play, they control the play, and they're able to
Hughes and Myers.
Offense. Yeah, they played together a few times, significant chunks of the season. It is a legit option. And that's I told Chris to make it that top 4 because that's what I think they're going to do. You play Hughes with Myers, and you have a play driving defense pair. You play them with PD and the PD's line, the Lotto line, or whoever's on that right side, and then you have Edler and Schmidt as your tough matchup defenseman. Schmidt did that in Vegas. He was the defenseman that played the toughest minutes for Vegas for a couple of years now, and he can do that and while still putting up points. So, and then if you do that, then you're leaving potentially a third pairing of Ben with Hugh Levy, Ben with Rafferty, Ben with Chatfield that can clean things up and just get off the ice without a negative. So at this point, I'd love to see them find a way to upgrade that, but I don't know if that's available to them at this point. But Hughes and Myers is a legit option as a pair. Myers gets so over criticized by Canucks fans just because of the contract, but he was legitimately in consideration for the best right side defenseman that they had last year. How much did they miss him in that Vegas series with Alex Tuck? Like he can play and he can get up the ice and he can be a puck mover as well. So Hughes and Myers is, I honestly think, Kev, you're out to left field in it with saying it's a bad option, because I think it's shown that it is a legit good option for the Canucks, especially if Edler and Schmidt can be your shutdown pair.
Why is it always left field and never right field? I always have to.
That's the saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the expression came from, but that's the expression.
I always played right field. Never played left field. No, I still think Myers is a little bit slow, but if it works, great. I mean, I think the Canucks. I think the nice thing with the Canucks too with this is you can play around with that top four, and I do think Green likes to do that every once in a while too. And Nolan Bob so that's that option as well. And it's, I mean, obviously you still need to improve. Nobody's saying that this is the defense that ends all defense and anything like that, but still need to find some other ways to improve that bottom part of that defense. And of course, Devin, you gave your thoughts. So I guess where, because Canucks Twitter is Canucks Twitter, where are we at with Benning? Where are we at with the Canucks? What are the pitchforks down now, or I guess with the buyout window coming up here, the question about Brandon Sutter and buying him out and seeing if you can get that contract out and add a draft pick for anything.
The pitchforks are not down because Benning is still swimming in his previous mistakes. You got Brandon Sutter making 4.375. You got Louis Eriksson making 6 for another 2 years. Jay Beagle at $3 million for another 2 years is tough to swallow in the current climate as a fourth line center. They still have Sven Berchi on the hook, and we don't know. There's probably gonna be some dead cap there because he's going to be in the AHL or whatever that looks like. So it's unfortunate that, and then they've got, and then unfortunately they got the low angle recapture that they have to deal with for the next 2 years, and Ryan Spooner's still on the cap for this year. There's too many mistakes that Benning's made in the past to be for fans to be able to look past it. He's made this team better since he's taken the job, but he's had some major missteps that have really cost them opportunities to make it better and make a run this season. If they didn't have, say they signed Brandon Sutter to a 1 year less contract and he's off this year, that's enough money for Toffoli. And then you've got a legit top 6 again. If say they didn't, and then you've still got Furlands too. We don't know what's going on with Furland. So if he didn't sign Furland last year, as much as we want, he is exactly what they need into a healthy Furland, but he hasn't proven that he can be that way. Unfortunately, and they're still in limbo. Are they going to be able to put him on LTIR, or is he going to try and come back? There's again that's money they could have used to improve the team or even keep Toffoli. Right now, the biggest loss is Toffoli, in my opinion, because they haven't replaced him. They lost Markstrom, but replaced him with Holtby, and Holtby and Demko have the ability to to make up for that loss. I wrote an article on that. Go read that at thehockeypodcast.com. And then they replaced Chris Tanev with Nate Schmidt, and Tanev is a much better defensive player than Nate Schmidt, but Tanev is an elite defensive player. So you've lost that, but you've gained offense and a more well-rounded defenseman in Nate Schmidt. So that you've mitigated that loss, but they haven't mitigated the Tyler Toffoli loss yet. And right now it looks like they're just hoping for development from key young players like Jake Virtanen, Adam Gaudette, maybe even a Zach McEwen. Maybe they're hoping for a Niels Hoglander to really surprise and come in and be someone who can push for minutes. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but at least for this season. but they're really hoping that right now it looks like they're really hoping for development from the young players. And if they get it, they're going to be in a very good position, especially going forwards, because they're also going to have Vasily Podkolzin coming in. They're going to have Niles Hoglander coming in. They've got Jack Rathbone, Borgo Rafferty, and Ole Levy who can push for minutes on the blue line. But that's all ifs. There's so much ifs with this team. And unfortunately, because of the way the bad contracts that they're dealing with, they can't go out and make a big splash to make a to improve this team, or at least, again, they could have kept Tyler Toffoli, who was a really good fit in that top six.
Yeah, I would have to agree that the Toffoli loss is definitely the most glaring one right now. I would have to agree with Sean in the sense that they're probably gambling on the fact that they think that either Hoglander or Podkolzin could potentially make the jump and maybe fill that, or that in conjunction with giving Jake more of an opportunity in the top six. Remains to be seen. But yeah, I think that's kind of what Benning is kind of low-key gambling on this next season.
I think the one thing that is, the past of the past as of right now. You can't change shit about it. So moving forward, the biggest question for me is Ferland, whether or not he's going to be able to play. And I have a feeling he's going to push to play. And then hopefully he doesn't get injured, but I feel like he won't be able to play at the level that he wants to and that he's able to. So I think that's going to be a potential going forward for Canucks fans, is not hoping that Ferland can't play. Obviously, you hope he can play because he can be that difference maker, and he is that player that the Canucks are missing. But I have a feeling that that's going to be a good potential and maybe help the cap going into the year.
It's just they can't plan on it because they don't know what he's going to look like. Unfortunately, this isn't like the Leafs last year where they traded for David Clarkson, who was legit injured, and were able to use that to create long-term injury reserve cap space for them to basically get out of cap jail. They can't do unless they know that he's not going to play this year. Which I think you can make an argument that he should take a full year off and see how he feels. Then they're going to have to get creative, and whether or not that means breaking from what their plan looks like it is to clear off as much bad and dead cap space for next season, because they've got Hughes and Pettersson to sign after this upcoming season. And sign and buy out Brandon Sutter and add another little layer to that. Open up cap space this year, but lose next year. Remains to be seen. If they can find the way to move a Berchi or a Sutter to someone, even if it means adding a draft pick, I think it makes a lot more sense than the buyout, honestly, because you're hamstringing yourself going forwards again because you're adding more cap constraints to next season, and we don't know what next season is really going to look like. But if we go off of what top end players have gotten in the past, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Canucks lock up Pettersson and Hughes to $20 million combined next year. Because I think you're going to get Pettersson hopefully around 12% of the cap, which would put him around 10 million. But I could see him pushing up past that, depending on how long the deal is. And then you've got Hughes, and it's going to be really interesting between Hughes, Makar, and Dahlin all needing new contracts. And I think Heiskanen as well. They're all going to need new contracts after this upcoming season. And are they going to follow the route that Thomas Chabot took and go 8x8? If not, then they're going to set the new market for what a top end defenseman coming off and a young top end defenseman is going to get.
I just want to solidify my comment. I like, obviously you don't know what Ferland's going to do, but I'm saying that if halfway through the year, all of a sudden he's on LTIR, then that opens up a little bit more room for you to potentially get somebody with a 1 year or less than a year left on their contract, and potentially help another team by helping out your team in a trade. And I do see Hughes setting the market. I think he's a different dynamic player than Chabot, and I think he probably could get $9 million.
Yeah, I posted this in our group chat this week because I got into a little bit of discussion with some other Canucks fans. If you're starting a team, if you're starting a team from scratch and you've got the choice between Thomas Chabot and Quinn Hughes, who are you picking to build your defense around? That's a tough question. You've got Hughes who's an absolute game changer, can move the puck like no one else. He can quarterback your power play, but he doesn't penalty kill. But then you got Thomas Chabot, who isn't as dynamic offensively, but still very good. Is a minute munching defenseman. He can easily, he's a workhorse, and I've lost count of how many times he's played over 30 minutes a game. And then you've got and then he also penalty kills. So I don't think there's a wrong answer, but Chabot signed before this past season, so the cap hasn't changed. So if you're going to go with percentage of the cap, you can't even use that. I think 8 million, around 8 million is what that all four of those new defensemen are going to get, depending on what the cap looks like next year, which I think it's supposed to be flat again. So
a little daunting.
Mm-hmm.
For your old school hockey fans, I think Chabot is more like a Lindstrom-esque player, and then you have Hughes that is kind of a bit more dynamic, like Scott Niedermayer. So it's hard to compare the two. They're both great players, yeah, I think you're right, Sean. I don't think that you can really it's a hard question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can't go wrong either way, though.
Yeah, especially if those are the comparables. Like, how can you choose who's the better of the two?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like it's just, but circling right back to the Canucks and what the issues are. It's legit. It is, the issues with the Canucks have been for a couple of years and will continue to be the bad contracts until they can clear all those off. The pitchforks are going to be sharp and ready for Jim Benning, and as all the good moves he has made, the trading Eric Branson for Tanner Pearson, the drafts, trading for JT Miller, and now the Schmidt trade. For all the good, there's just as much bad, unfortunately, and until they can clear that off and starting to see what this new core is, we're starting to see it. But like in 2 years, if in 2 years Paul Colson comes over, because he's not coming this year, he's got a year left on his contract in the KHL, so he's not coming until the 2021-22 season. But if he comes in and can be a legit top 9 option right off the bat, game changing, because him and Horvat, once Podkolzin's used to the NHL, could be a legit like minute munching top line that can play against anyone, match up with like against any line. And then you've still got Pedersen on another line that's also a top line that can score against anyone. So but they have to get there, and they can't try and do the shortcuts that have created these bad contracts.
I just don't know if anyone at this point can take $4 million. I mean, it's a great idea to try to trade Brandon Sutter, and I think, like, in a real world, I actually think Brandon Sutter is a very useful player. I think a lot of teams could use a Brandon Sutter on them. I don't think he's. I mean, is he not top 6? No. Is he bottom 6? Very useful, I think. Yes, a lot of ways. Versatile, but it's $4 million, and just there's so much. I just don't see a team really able to do it. That's the problem.
Yeah, he's owed 3.5 for this season. He's been paid his $1 million signing bonus, but for this season he's owed 3.5. So yeah, and the way how tight the purse strings are this year, I don't know if there's a team out there, unfortunately, that's willing to take it on unless they're taking a bad contract back. The one move I keep looking at as somehow the Canucks, if they can somehow find a way to make it work, I think it makes it free things up a little bit for them. It's actually a Louis Eriksson trade. It's a Louis Eriksson for Anton Strawman. Both have 2 years left. Louis Eriksson has a cap hit of $6 million, but only is owed he's owed 3 this year and then another 4 next year. I believe, no, something like that. But he's owed less money than Strawman is in Florida, but Strawman's buyout would be a little bit easier to take for the Canucks if they go that way. Plus, he's a defenseman and a right shot defenseman that can fill out that issue, and then they open up a roster spot up front for other players there. You're not actually getting much in the way of cap room. Maybe you have to get a little more creative and make it a little more complicated, and you don't actually gain cap room, but it opens up a little more flexibility going forwards. So I'm very interested. I honestly think it is going to be a Sutter buyout because I think they're going to run out of other options. It's the last option that they really want to take, but I just don't see it out there right now unless they're willing to throw in a second round pick.
I just don't see Tampa Bay needing a Louis Eriksson. Especially you got which isn't wait, isn't Stroman with Tampa?
No, it's with Florida.
Oh, never mind. I was thinking
he signed there last year.
Okay, right. I for some reason had him in Tampa, but you're right, he's in Florida. But I mean, what's Quenneville gonna? Okay, apologies, but retract. What the hell is Quenneville gonna do with Eriksson?
To say that Eriksson's not an NHL player is like absolute like crap. He is way overpaid at $6 million, but he's still an NHL player. He's still a good bottom six.
I'm not saying he's not an NHL player, but what's Quenneville going to do with him?
He's going to play him in his bottom six. What is he going to do with Anton Strawman, who's been putting up 10 points, 15 points a season, making 5.5? There, Kev. Like I'm not saying they're dumping Eriksson on him with nothing in return. They're swapping bad contracts.
I personally don't see it, Sean. I really don't. Looking at the depth here, it doesn't. I don't know what's in their system, what's in Florida's system, so that someone can step up into Anton Strawman's third pairing defense. Like I in a perfect world, yeah, that's what you want. But I'm with Kev. I just don't see that being a fit at all. If they do it great.
Marcus Ludovara and Radko Gudas and Mackenzie Weegar on the right side. Well, Mackenzie Weegar plays the right. He's a right shot defenseman that can play both sides.
Totally, but what I'm saying is that why would Florida do that when they already have? Hold on. Let me finish. Look at their bottom six. It's filled with younger guys that are trying to make a difference. And why would you gum up that side or like the 4-6 forwards when you have young guys trying to jump in, and then if anything, you have your depth in wherever their farm team is for defensemen. It's proven that they take a longer time to get going and to become an NHLer than forwards do. So keep them down there. I don't see it. I don't at all. You've come up a couple times with these different trade options that, oh yeah, well, if they can do this, like that's a big fucking if, man.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a go-to, but the owners in Florida have said that they want to cut cash. This trade would cut cash. It's a Melnick trade. That's what it is. It's a Melnick trade. 2, you look at their forwards. There's no one on there that I like makes me think that Eriksson can't help them. They've got Ryan Lomberg, who Carter Verhaeghe. He barely played for Tampa.
I know
Ryan
what Lomberg
was
is.
with
They've got Vinny Hinostroza, who could it's just there is a spot for him there. That's what I'm saying. Is like they've got 10 forwards signed. That's it. They've got 10 forwards signed right now.
all I know is,
and to say that Louis Eriksson can't help that bottom six is an absolute I don't get it. Like as overpaid as Louis Eriksson is, he's still a good bottom six forward who can penalty kill, and he's actually a quiet leader. I think is what people don't realize is he's actually an okay quiet leader. There's a reason that he got the little things moniker in Vancouver is because Travis Green said he does the little things good well. So they can't learn from that. They can't for 2 years when you're owing him $1 million this year and then another $4 million next year. Like if there's a deal out there, it's going to be something like that. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it is going to happen. I'm not saying that's like Florida is going to be targeting Louis Eriksson. No one's going to be targeting Louis Eriksson to try and bring them in. But if you're going to find a way to make your roster a little more flexible, you have to make a deal like that. Even with Brandon Sutter, maybe you trade him for someone who's making $2.5-3 million. Somehow, I don't know, but that's the type of they're going to have to make if there's a move out there. That's the move that they're going to have to make. It's not going to be a Louis Eriksson dumped off with a 3rd round pick for a 5th. It's not going to be that. No one's taking that on.
No, to be able to realize was that Sean's just trying to spitball or brainstorm here. He's trying to find a home for Louis, not saying this is likely to happen.
Well, no, but like if realistically, if you're thinking about getting a salary out of there, yeah, it makes sense on paper. But the biggest thing is what's going to happen on the ice. Are you saying that who's a better player, Marcus Stroman or Louis Eriksson? I'd say that Marcus Stroman has a bigger impact on the game on ice than Louis Eriksson.
And I never said it was going to be a straight up trade. I said that's the building blocks. You're probably going to I did say you're probably going to have to make it a little more complicated, add some picks, add some players, whatever, to make it work. But that's the type of deal the Canucks are going to have to do to try and make this work. If they're going to try and find a way to improve their blue line, they're going to have to maybe take on a bad contract on the blue line and hope for like a Sutter or an Eriksson and hope that that player can outplay that can play better than they did last year. And Anton Stroman is someone that if I'm Jim Benning, I'm phoning Bill Zito on. And if that trade's not there, then you move on. But I'm saying that's the type of move you're going to have to look at. And to say that to literally honestly say that Louis Eriksson adds nothing to a roster is flat
That's not what I said, though. That's not what I said either. That's not what I said.
That's what it comes across.
How is Joel Quenneville going to use Louis Eriksson? Yeah,
Joel Quenneville's an experienced head coach who knows what Louis Eriksson brings
and doesn't bring.
Yeah, but he's still. But like again, look at their bottom six. Like it's full of nobodies. Like it's not like he's replacing an up and coming player. Like they've got Owen Tippett coming up. But is he ready? Like they've got a bunch of young players, but are they ready to make the step to the NHL?
I've always liked Nola Chari.
I have too.
I've always liked Vinny Hinostroza.
Mm-hmm. Brett Connolly's good.
Yeah, Brett Connolly is a guy that never fills his potential.
Connolly's a top 6 guy.
He's on the 4th line according to this, third line here at this particular point.
He's making 3.5, and he's a really good player. But yeah, it's about balance. And if you add a guy who can play penalty kill and that on your bottom 6, and you're getting rid of cash for your owner, it's something you would look at. This is the reason why Ottawa's made all those weird trades in the past because their owner wanted to cut cash.
All I know is apparently, according to Elliot Friedman, who the Mackenzie Weegar sweepstakes, they are asking a lot for Mackenzie Weegar, like a lot. So that's why I'm not sure that works. I see what you're trying to say, but I don't think that they're asking a lot for Mackenzie Weegar.
Well, yeah, but they, like I said, on the right side they've got Aaron Ekblad, number one defenseman with the bullet, and then they've got Marcus Nudavara, very underrated defenseman that they got for cheap out of Columbus. And then they've got Radko Gudas, who's a beast of a defenseman. They've got right side depth that they can get rid of. And as well as Anton Stralman right now, they've got the depth. And then if they trade Weegar, what are they getting back? If they're getting back another young defenseman, then they've got the ability to move on from someone like an Anton Stralman for 2 years. I'm not saying, and they've got Chase Prisky coming up as well. All I'm saying is that's the type of move that you're going to make. Maybe it's not the right fit, but that's the type of move you make. And that's, and again, I don't think that you're to say that Eriksson does not bring enough to the to make it happen. I don't understand that.
Okay, listen. I love the creativity. I love where you're getting at. I love how you're thinking outside the box. Okay. I just don't. Yes. And that is the type of move that Jim Benning needs to look for. It's just finding a dance partner. And I don't think I think Anton Stralman brings more on the ice than Louis Eriksson. I'm not discounting Louis Eriksson as a player. He's still
you're not.
an NHL player, but he has flaws, and Anton Stralman, I think, is a better third line defender than Louis Eriksson is as a bottom six player. And that's what I'm saying.
Sean, would you be willing to throw Virtanen in that trade?
I mean, depends on what else is coming back, because they're still taking back a bad contract. Okay, but that's what I'm saying is there's got to be creativity there. All right, and let's just at this point, that's the type of stuff he needs to look at. And if I'm apparently way off the map and saying that Louis Eriksson is not an NHL and crazy to think that Louis Eriksson's an NHL player still, then like I don't know what else to say, because for you literally to say how is Joe Quenneville going to use Louis Eriksson when he plays PK for Travis Green. He's been moved up to play with Bo Horvat on his line because he's a safe player that can help build up the play. It is like blows my mind. It does. It literally does.
I don't see him in a regular, like looking at this Florida Panther forward lineup. I don't see.
They have 10 players signed. Like there's
okay, at this particular point,
spots available.
Hold on. Kev, you need to stop winding Sean up. I can hear his blood pressure boiling.
But like honestly, they have 10 NHL players signed right now. NHL forwards signed. It's not like they have 13, 14 signed that they know that there's no spot for them. There is a spot if they feel like they can make it work. I'm not saying they can, but to say there isn't is just blows my mind that you can say that when they have 10 NHL players signed. That's it.
Well, I'm on dailyfaceoff.com, and I'm looking at what their projected lineup is, and I see the way I see it here. They got some work to do, yes, but I see potentially 2 spots for him, maybe. I see him in a bottom 6 role, and I maybe see him as a 12th to 13th forward. That's why I'm saying, what the hell is he going to do with it? That's my, like, I'm not. And if you're making all these arguments, why does he not just keep him for the year here in Vancouver? He's going to help.
Because they need to find a way to flex. It's flexibility. It's what it is. They've like on that line. They've got Owen Tippett. Is he ready to make that step? They've got
Hold on, but
Cinderella, who hasn't even signed, and they've got Carter Verhaeghe as their third line center, who wasn't even a regular player for Tampa. Is there and Gregory Denisenko, who hasn't played a full season in the NHL either.
what flexibility you're looking for? You're talking about flexibility. What flexibility are you looking for?
Well, if you move Louis Eriksson and get a bad contract back that's a defenseman, then you're filling a hole in the defense until players are ready. That's what I'm saying. With Florida it's the same thing. They've got some depth on the right side. They've got Kevin on daily faceoff. They've got Anton Stroman playing the left side. They've got Gudas, Nunavara, and Ekblad all on the right side.
Yeah.
So it's looking at that and seeing, is there a deal to be made there? I'm not saying that's the deal, but to literally just not say no, there's not a deal there, I think is ridiculous. They don't even have Riley Stillman on that line, and he's a legit NHL defenseman.
Did we just agree to disagree at this point?
Yeah, I think that's the adage right now, is agree to disagree. There's nothing wrong with having a debate about it. It's just I think it's time to move on.
Yeah, tangent.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to insult Louis Eric. I just asked. I thought it was a question, but that's okay. Where do we move on to?
The Flames.
Take a deep breath here.
Woosah.
So bread got bread as that's terrible. Was that worse than the Schmidt's Creek one?
The Schmidt's Creek one actually made sense. This one was just word barble.
Well, no. Magic Patty's nickname is Bread. He's the bread.
I know, but
I'm personally fan of the Schmidt's Creek one better, but I still appreciate this one.
Thank you. You win some and you lose some in this world. Devin, I think it sounds like you already have thoughts. So I'll just Andrew Mangiapane, 2-year voids arbitration, 2 years, 2.25.
I love it. I love the player. I think he's definitely an engine to the line that he's on, whichever line that he's on. Gritty, smaller player. Not afraid to mix it up. Every time that there's a whistle, you could see him talking to the other team, chirping the other team. Love this player. I just think it could have been a longer deal. I feel like we could have locked him up for a long time. I think that he's definitely solidified a top 9 player on the Flames, and a potential top 6 player, arguably, going forward. And if we could have locked him up last year instead of if Brad Treliving could have potentially swallowed his pride and locked him up for a long-term deal like Rasmus Andersson, because I believe that Rasmus Andersson will outplay his $4 million for the next 6 years. And Andrew Mangiapane, if we locked him up for a long-term deal like that, I feel like that would be he's a similar player that could outplay his deal, and I think he knows that he can outplay a $4 million deal potentially. So I think it was he obviously he's a bit strong-headed, and same with his agent is strong-headed in what they believe that he is, and I think that he has potential there to be a very big impact player for the Flames going forward. I think that's the only thing that I would really criticize about this deal, is just that I feel like he could have gone longer term for this player, just to solidify cost certainty going forward, especially in this cost certainty when you want cost certainty in these times that we're living in right now.
According to Mangiapane and Treliving, the issue there was cap.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. I mean, even with signing him, I feel like that we still have a bit of work to do to get under the cap potentially. It sounds like we might just be hitting pretty damn close to 81 mil. So I understand that, and I'm just saying in a perfect world, if we could have gone longer term, I think that would have been better for the team and for Mangiapane.
Fair. Yeah.
Fair deal. like really good deal for Mangiapane. I don't think people realize how good he of a player he is. He's got such a high motor. He's got a nose for the net, and is a very responsible defensive player too. Um, it's a fair deal. If I was Mangiapane, I wouldn't have gone long term. Just because I bet on myself getting a 2-year deal, getting a little cost certainty through all of this makes a lot of sense. After 2 years, hopefully the cap's going back up in a little bit, and he can get paid. Like, he should be able to get paid if he continues to develop and start putting up points. If he can put up a couple 20 goal seasons, he's going to get paid over $4 million at the end of this. So that would have been the issue again, as you guys were saying, the cap, because if you're going to buy out years that he could potentially make more, you're going to have to pay for it. So a long-term deal was probably going to have to be $3-4 million, and but 2.5 for the player that Mangiapane is a really good deal for Calgary for the next 2 years, as well as you're giving cost certainty to Mangiapane. Yeah, 2.425. He gets paid basically the same in both years, which is interesting. It goes against what most contracts are going in terms of structure, but yeah, I like it for the Flames.
I like it too. I wonder if there was a trade on the table that would have been longer, but I'm just looking here. Who is off the books? So Gaudreau's off in 22-23. Ryan's off. Yeah, they don't have anyone. They have 2 RFAs coming into, or 2021. Everyone's signed at this. There's no one UFA'd at this particular point. Yeah, it's a good signing. I do wonder though if there was a trade in the works, if the Monahan Gaudreau thing happened, if he would have got a longer term, depending on what that was back. But that's, I think right now, I mean, I hope this, one of the things, like maybe later in the off season, we should do the projection. We should do the thing that Chris does there for
Projected lineup.
Yeah. But like I want to see a Lindholm, Tkachuk, Mangiapane next year. But we'll have to see if that works out.
I think that'd be a great line. I like that as well. But yeah, you also have Mark Giordano off the books in 2 years as well. So that'll be that could be money for Mangiapane as well. So yeah, he has the ability to move up and down the lineup easily enough. I could see him on that top line potentially, seeing exactly what they have with that. So I like the move.
It's a possibility that we could see Giordano off the books in 1 year. He could be wearing this.
He could be. I'd be
surprised if they took him.
I would too. I mean, it is just a 1 year deal that would be left on him, so it wouldn't make sense for them to do that just as a character player going forward. And I see Mark Giordano retiring as a Calgary Flame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could. That's more likely than not, but I'm just saying it's possible. But
it's a 6.75 cap hit, and he'll be 38 by the time they make that draft. And are you really, when you're trying to build a team that to be successful for years to come, are you really taking a player who's right at the end of his career and won't be adding much other than maybe a season? So the other thing is, like, the one thing I just wanted to bring up, I'm looking at the roster, and I know you guys keep throwing out things that potentially trading Gaudreau and Monahan. I don't think that's happening anymore. I think they're going to go in and see what they can do with this revamped blue line with Tanev brought in. Hopefully they get the steps from Valimaki and Anderson, and then with Markstrom and net, I think they go for it. And I think unless you can get a really good player on short term on 1 year deal, under market value, you go with what you got here, and then you look at who's available next year. You got, again, Taylor Hall's available again next year. You've got a bunch of other like good players available to add to your team, maybe to make a run. Because what do they got? They've got just under $4 million in cap space now. They've got Derek Ryan coming off the over 3 million in Derek Ryan coming off the cap. They've got David Rittich coming off the cap next year. And they've got Zagadulin and Parsons. Hopefully one of them can step up and become potentially a backup option for them next year, cheaper. I could see the Flames making a big splash in UFA next year. They'll have the flexibility and the cap set up to the point where they can make it, because they've got Kachuk signed, they've got Gaudreau signed, they've got Monahan, they've got all their the top end players, like the big name players, signed for at least one more year. I look out for the Flames in UFA 2021 if they set up.
I still think that potential trade is on the books, but I think you're right, Sean, in the sense that it's trending towards not happening. Other teams that could be potential trade partners need to figure some stuff out before they really make a move on the trade front. So I think there's also a good potential option there for them to make a big splash in free agency.
The two things I would say, though, is they still need to improve that top six. Maybe unless they believe that Bennett and Dubé is going to make that step, they still need a right-hand shot to play somewhere, I think, on the forward line, an effective right-hand shot. I guess if you go Monahan, Gaudreau, Lindholm, Backlund, Kachuk, Mangiapane, it's not terrible, but I do think you can get better. And then the other question is, depending on, we'll get into this is our next topic, but it's going to really depend on where Flames ownership is at in terms of what they were willing to spend. Because if I'm not in Alberta, but if the economy is going the way that Twitter is telling me, they may want to take a step back. I don't know, in terms of spending. That I'm just saying it's a possibility. But I do see, I can see your point.
I do see Dylan Dubé taking a step. Sam Bennett played well in the playoffs, so he's always a playoff player, but he actually was playing center for the first time, and since he's been drafted, pretty much they've tried him at center a bunch of times and it hasn't really worked out. But he seems like he's been in a good spot at the end of, or I guess when COVID decided, or after COVID happened. So I could definitely see both those players taking steps to solidify that top six. And if Sam Bennett could kind of bump out Michael Backlund, I don't see it happening, but if he could, then that would be a big step forward. Having Sam Bennett, Kachuk, and Mangiapane as a line, that is pure grit and just in your face hockey. And I think that would be a fantastic line going forward.
For me, again, I look at who's available. If you, as Kevin said, if you're looking for a right shot, there's not much available that could maybe. I know there was a Flames account, a fan account, that was questioning why people wanted Corey Perry, but he'd be a great ad, I think.
It would be a great ad for the Flames. I agree.
That'd be amazing, but like they don't have the cap room. They have no more cap room really to play with.
The Flames, they've got just under $4 million in cap space right now. If you're signing him short term, and the only person left off the books that needs a new contract is Oliver Shillington, and he's not going to get much. And like Corey Perry is going to cost you maybe $2 million, maybe $3 million. Like,
or you could be a 700K player like like Jumbo Joe, I guess.
I think there's definitely room for them to make it, because other than that, I think it's just grow from within, and I think that's what a lot of teams are going to be doing this year, is seeing what a make or break or sink or swim season for a lot of their younger players that they've been waiting to see step up. Canucks are doing with Jake Virtanen and likely Adam Gaudette too. We didn't get into that when we talked Canucks, but I think that this is really a make or break a season for Adam Gaudette. Despite how well he's played, he needs to show that he can play tough minutes. He can be a player that Travis Green can rely on to go out and play against the top lines. Kind of like Sam Bennett with the Flames has kind of proven at times. And Mangiapane's now proven that he can do. It's that type of stuff that that those type of players that need to step up for the Flames. Because you look at who's available at UFA, and I don't see anyone that really stands out to me that makes a lot of sense for the Flames.
Yeah, Mike Hoffman is not an answer. I'm sorry.
He's also a left shot, right? He's not the right shot that you're looking for. Mikael Granlund's a left shot. Duclair's a left shot. Athanasiou is a left shot. All the top end forwards that are still available are basically left shot wingers. And unless you're making a gigantic deal to make with a Monahan or a Gaudreau, I don't see anything out there that's realistically out there that can make a significant change to the top six of the Flames. So I just think that it's time to look from within. Hope that you get a 20-goal season from Mangiapane, which I think is very realistic. The big thing for me with the Flames is the defense. Losing Gustafsson, I think, is going to be huge. The Flames.
Be gone?
Yeah, he's gone to Philadelphia. But you look at who's your top end puck movers on the Flames.
You got Noah Hannafin, you have Giordano, Anderson. I mean, like, I agree. It is not like it's your top four isn't really a who's who of defensemen, but I feel like they're sneaky good. I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making out to be. Now, with saying that, Tanev, obviously he has injury problems, so he won't be. Chalk him out for 20 to 30 games potentially, just because of the way that he plays. And yeah, at that point, yeah, things get pretty tight there on the right side. So if everybody stays healthy, which is not going to happen, I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal as people are making out to be. But once there's an injury, yeah, you're looking at Oliver Shillington jumping in the lineup. And not saying anything against him, but you have a Connor Mackey as well, who hasn't played any NHL minutes yet. You don't know exactly what he is, but they are high on him. It's just, they do need to solidify that right side of the defense just to make sure that they have their shit covered in case of injuries.
Well, again, it's just they're hoping for and expecting improvements from within. Noah Hannafin and Rasmus Andersson both had 22 points last year. I think you need at least one of them to push up over 30, maybe even 40.
I would say both.
To feel comfortable with what you got there. Hannafin, I think both maybe have it. Hannafin's been up over 30 twice, once with the Flames. So it's. Like I said, I'm not saying that. I like the depth of the Flames blue line. I just don't know if the top end talent is there. Giordano's on the downhill of his career after having an absolutely amazing season 2 years ago, and then you've got then you've just maybe even Valimaki. Like, what do you have in Valimaki? What do you have in Shillington? What do you really have offensively in Rasmus Andersson? Are the three big questions on the Canucks. On the Flames blue line.
Yeah, sorry, what were you going to say, Devin?
Just that Hannafin. I think we know what Hannafin is. He's kind of a 2.0 of Dougie Hamilton. Has the size, has the speed, but doesn't really use his body as much as he probably could and should. But it just doesn't seem like Hannafin. his potential is there. It just doesn't seem like he really he hasn't gotten there yet, and it doesn't seem like he will. I think Anderson has higher ceiling than Hannafin does, and I could see him up over 30 points, maybe even 40 points. If he really, really wants to get there, I think he can. But I mean, yeah, just as far as depth goes, we did sign Colton Poolman, who's Tucker Poolman's brother, out of the States. And then, you have Alexander Yeltsin as well, who actually played. I didn't mind his game when he came up and played a couple times last year. So it's just given the lack of NHL experience, yes, I'm a little worried with the depth that we have on defense.
Tanev will be a help for Hannafin, though, I think, this year. Not that Hamonic was not, but I just have a hunch that Tanev is going to be better for him. I don't know why I feel that way, but
I'm with you. I'm interested where they slot Tanev. Is he going to be with Hannafin to help him make the next step and make him feel comfortable, or is it going to be a Valimaki that's going to be paired with him?
Yeah, before we move on to the final topic, because we've been a long time, I think we're relying a lot and expecting a lot on a guy that has been out for a year to do a lot of different things, that has played how many NHL games?
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a huge expectation. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he can't do it, but that's a pretty huge chip that we're putting in the middle of the table to hope. Okay, well, Valimaki's going to be the puck moving guy now.
Kevin, you hate dogs. Why do you hate dogs?
Yeah, I know. I complain. It's obvious from that comment and my Louis Erickson thing. I hate dogs. That's the.
Oh yeah.
Sean, you're muted.
We didn't even go into your batshit insane take that the Canucks should have traded Brock Besser for Brendan Gallagher.
I think we've already gone down enough rabbit holes this podcast.
Oh no, I'm not saying we should go down. I'm just saying we haven't even gotten to that. And
I don't know if that was as batshit as anyone, but okay. Anyway, we should have that batshit takes. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about, and I do think, is Bill Foley was on Las Vegas radio. I don't think Gary Bettman is very happy with Bill Foley, but I'll let them have that private conversation. But Bill Foley basically said that the idea will be that the season starts February 1st. It's a 48 to 56 game season with the intention and the necessity to end this season before the Summer Olympics start for NBC, which is huge on this. But he said that it looks like they're going to have an all-Canadian division because there's no way that the Canadian teams are going to be able to travel to the States. And he said in parts that's why he had no problem with the Nate Schmidt deal to Vancouver, because they're not playing. So my question is, I guess, are we okay with a all-Canadian? What are our thoughts on an all-Canadian division from a fan perspective? And I want to hear from Chris first, because he hasn't talked in.
As far as from a fan perspective, I think Canadian viewers would love it. I think if you just have if you build up these rivalries within Canada, I think that Canadian hockey fans are going to eat that shit up. I think they're going to love it.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of it. Just getting that rivalry, and seeing the Eastern Conference teams more often, like the Canadians, the Maple Leafs, and especially Ottawa. I think it's going to be very cool to if this happens, that you get to see these teams more than just once or twice a year, or I guess it'd be twice a year. I love it, and it becomes for me as a Leafs and Flames fan. There's going to be a lot more interest for me to watch those games as well.
Yeah, that was just happy to be able to shove Toronto down our throats even more.
Oh yeah, because I just shove it. I shove it hard. I'm a typical Flames fan or Leafs fan that just loves just being like, everything's great in Leafland. Everything's fucking fantastic. God, if anybody knows me, you know that I am not one of those Leafs fans.
Yeah, it'll be insane, honestly. Just imagine if like because it. I bet you the other thing is what we'll see it depending on how they do it. If the NHL has to do this and it's literally like they play within their divisions for the whole season, like the WHL is doing, and then they go from there, which would be very interesting. I bet you we see uh we see them doing 2-3 games at a time. Like Toronto comes out and plays a couple games in Vancouver, and the absolute gong show with media and fans is just going to be uh, just I don't know how I could explain it. That I don't think I do a good job
Andrew
because
Walker versus Steve Simmons.
yeah, it just would be just crazy, right? So it could be really fun. It'd be very different because I think the reason they're going to have to do that again, yeah, is because it's such an absolute like we don't know what it's going to look like in the States. The States has been so ridiculous in terms of how they've been handling the COVID situation, where Canada's government doesn't trust them to be able to do anything, so they don't want them to bring people in, right? So the borders gonna be closed, and so what are they gonna do with the AHL teams, because Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver all have US based AHL teams, and then you've got all the other questions on what happens with trades, waivers, and all that. So it's gonna be I'm excited to see what happens if we do see a Canadian team division, and the gong show that will follow. Because if you have Toronto playing a couple games in Vancouver over a weekend, could you imagine, like you'd have Toronto media talking all about the Canucks and what happens, and if there's some sort of incident in the game, how overblown it would get, right? So like I said, I really want to be able to watch that. It'd be a lot of fun.
It would be fun. Now, I know that there was a suggestion that there would be an American team in this. There was someone suggested that as an idea.
What, an American team in the Canadian division?
Yeah, I think it was obviously would have been a northern team, but
it would have to be Buffalo.
Yeah,
if
that's what
it would have to be Buffalo, but there's still 7 teams, right? And there's the way they've got the divisions lined up right now. There's still divisions with 7 teams. So, and with the again, the biggest issue with that is the border. Like, is Buffalo going to be playing out of Hamilton? Or is Buffalo going to be playing out of Toronto? Is that what's going to happen?
They would have to. It wouldn't be Hamilton, or it could be Hamilton, but it depends if there's going to be any fans in the stands to actually watch. Because then it would be probably Toronto.
And that's the thing, is if they're going to do that, then why would Buffalo want to give up fans in the stands if they have that option?
Okay, so here are my concerns. Like, I love the idea in principle. I think it would be a lot of fun for a year. I think it would be just great. But I still think there's some issues in terms of how trades are made, because we're still going to have this border. And if let's say let's use the Canucks and Panthers as our example again. If they make a trade, there's going to be a 14-day quarantine on any Panther that goes over, has to come over the border. That's not going to change. That's not an advantage for the Canadian teams in any way, shape, or form. How does the playoff structure work? I'm a little worried about just this will be great for a year, but I just think it might get a little exhausting that we're just seeing the same 8 teams over and over again, because now we're seeing a lot more Vancouver and Edmonton. And I like the fact that Vancouver and Calgary play 5 times as opposed to 8 times. I just, it creates a bit more, I think a little bit less creates a bit more special in it. And I think the other thing that is unfortunate, and I know it's unfortunate, but I do think the Pittsburghs, the Crosbys, the Ovechkins, the the superstars from the East coming out West is something that is a very special thing. And I'm sad that that's not going to happen, because that is, I kind of wish in a lot of ways we got to see a Pittsburgh and Washington a little bit more than other, I think that's the other thing as well. But in principle, for a year, I don't mind it, but I don't want that. I'll be honest, I am not for a permanent Canadian division.
Oh,
I don't think any of us are down for a permanent. It's just if this is a one-off for one season, what's your take on it? And I honestly think ratings will be high. I think Canadian hockey fans will love it. And I think it's worth doing at least once, especially in this sort of unprecedented sort of circumstance.
because when you look at what it would look like, is the Metropolitans can be loving it because they'll be just basically the same division and be able to bust from arena to arena if that's what happens. The other Eastern division will be this very similar. And what the division based out of the East will be similar. There'll be shorter flights. The South division, that will be including California and all the way down over to Dallas, and probably including Arizona and Colorado, will be an absolute mess because that's a lot of travel. And then the Canadian teams are going to be traveling through 4 time zones. It's gonna be, but there's no good answer at this point.
No.
If the border's closed, then having that would be great, and just having hockey would be great. I'd rather have that than no hockey.
I agree. I understand. Those are my questions. Look, we have a special guest. Dog's like, what is going on?
Oh, hi.
Why is who?
This is Betty.
Hi, Betty.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's our dad's Frenchie.
Oh,
Big cutie.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I think it like if there's any time to do a Canadian division, it is now. They talked about it for. I feel like they've kind of thrown out like revamping and having a Northern division before. So like, yeah, I think it's fantastic, and I'd be very surprised if they don't do it going forward. It'll be. I'm very, very excited for it.
yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. But we'll, again, whole bunch of other questions to think about. But that is it. Is there anything else we want to talk about?
Yes, but I don't think we got time.
We'll save it for next week.
Yeah.
All right. How do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter.
I am at Schmidt on most social media.
I'm at Gordhowe09 on Twitter.
I am Kevol, Kvole. Heidi is Heidi Mazeballs. Tyler T Noble, who he's out and about again. And podcast_hockey. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. Thanks everyone for sticking around watching on Facebook. And hopefully we'll have better technical abilities next week. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. Okay.